Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Gentoo, your source for all things gaming and tech related. I'm Aaron James.
And I'm Wesley Ellington. Let's get right into this week's up-and-coming releases. You can see these games and many more released throughout the month on your favorite platforms.
There's a couple of ports that people have been waiting a long time to get their hands on coming out this week, and also a video game adaptation of a movie that came out 6 years ago?
It's a long time. Cuphead is finally released for the Nintendo Switch on April 18th. The game, infamous for having a tutorial so hard a game journalist couldn't even beat it, is hitting the Switch this week. Join Cuphead and Mugman as they defeat several different bosses in order to win back their souls that they lost in a bet with the devil.
The remastered versions of Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy X-2 are finally hitting the Xbox One on April 16th, after originally coming out for the PS3 in 2014. For the first time on any Microsoft console, you can experience the story of Titus as he travels around the land of Spira, fighting monsters, playing the underwater mashup of soccer and football known as Blitzball, and saving the world from sin, something we could use in this modern day.
Oh. Okay. World War Z comes out for the PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4 on April 16th. It has been 6 years since the release of the World War Z movie that starred Brad Pitt, and nobody really has any idea when or if the sequel will come out. But in the meantime, we've got the game. Get your zombie killing fix in with this 4-person co-op survivor game, or take it online for many different survivor versus zombie game modes.
These games and many more will be releasing throughout the month, so be sure to be on the lookout for them.
Up next, check out Aaron's Analysis with Aaron.
Hello, and welcome back to Aaron's Analysis. This week, we're looking at the recently released Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro is the most recent effort by development studio From Software, known for Armored Core and Dark Souls series. It shakes things up with an emphasis on clashing swords and stealth, as well as the removal of multiplayer, which is very popular in the Dark Souls games. I've been losing a lot of time to this game, and while I'm enjoying it greatly, there's actually not a lot that I dislike, so I'm going to nitpick pretty hard in the beginning. The camera has some issues. There's times when I think that the camera in this game has given me more problems than all the other Souls games combined. Some of the arenas that you fight bosses in are really small and tight, with pillars and other objects littered around, that if you hit one, it'll just completely mess your camera up, and it's no fun. The camera's probably the worst during these lone shadow fights. I find it getting completely stuck in the wall, allowing the dude to beat me to a pulp. I don't mind juggling different things to do during a fight, but dealing with the camera is not something that I want to be tasked with. The soundtrack is lackluster compared to Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne. While I do think that the soundtrack serves its purpose and is intense during the main boss fights, there's not many pieces that stand out to me. And the songs in Bloodborne were all unique and amazing, and I find it that a lot of tracks in this game are very similar, especially during the mini-bosses. There were only 2 tracks that really stood out to me, and those were Al and Ishin. Even then, they weren't nearly as good as Dark Souls 3 or Bloodborne's boss themes. And it's kind of upsetting because the Souls games have some of my favorite boss music of any games ever. And on the topic of disappointing sounds, I thought Sekiro's voice actor, while not terrible, was very monotone and kind of soulless to me. Now, I did play the game with the English dub, and it was intended for the Japanese, so that could be my own fault, but I did not want to read subtitles while I was fighting a boss. And my last nitpick is not something that I have a problem with, but it could pertain to other people. In previous Souls games, if you hit a tough spot and you ran into a wall and you couldn't get through that area, you could always grind out levels to increase your attack power. In this game, you have to beat bosses to increase your attack power, and it could get really draining for somebody to keep fighting the same boss over and over with no chance of getting any stronger before beating them. But that's not a problem I have, because I believe you should get good and beat the boss yourself. Now, some of the things that the game did right: the combat is so amazing. It's become one of my favorite combat systems in a game, and definitely the most recent in a long time. It's so satisfying and rewarding, and it feels great to pull off death blows on tougher enemies. I enjoy how many parts there are to the combat, with jumping, dodging, the prosthetics, deflecting, attacking. It's really fun, and it keeps me alert every time I fight. The bosses are good, and while I don't think there's any bosses that reach the same quality of Bloodborne or Dark Souls 3, I kind of like the soundtrack. There isn't a single bad boss in this game, and some of them are pretty great, I'll give it that. The animations in the game are extremely fluid, and because of how fast the movement speed in combat is, they always look extremely good. It doesn't matter what you're doing at a given moment, whether it's doing a combat art and flying through the air, or deflecting an enemy's sword, it all flows seamlessly. The areas are all unique and fun. None of the areas in this game are particularly annoying. Even the Sunken Valley, which is a poison area — the Souls games are notorious for terrible poison areas — was not that bad. Since there's fewer areas, all of them are different aesthetically while also making sense in lieu of the world. None of the enemies are too annoying, and it wasn't a slog to go through a single area. I also like how the Ashina Castle changes after certain events in the story, and it kind of keeps that familiar place fresh at the same time. It's possible that the lack of multiplayer could hurt the replayability of this game for me, as I had over 400 hours in that game. While it may hurt the replayability, as I don't think I'll be logging nearly 400 hours into Sekiro, I do think the quality of the game is still one of their best, and it'll keep me coming back for quite a while. Next up is Trevor with This Week In. Thanks for listening.
What's up, gamers? My name is Trevor. Welcome back to another segment of This Week In. So last week I talked a little bit about Kotaku's bombshell article by Jason Schreier covering the developer BioWare and the horrendous development life of Anthem. Following up on that, it seems Jason has struck again with another article that further discusses the horrible work environment issues at BioWare Studios. This week I wanted to talk a little bit more about that and the implications it may have on BioWare's next AAA release, Dragon Age 4. Whether or not it will actually be called Dragon Age 4 is up in the air, however it is the fourth installment in the franchise. If you're the type of gamer that loves massive story-driven RPGs like me, then I highly recommend playing through the series. I've put hundreds of hours into the Dragon Age games, and it's a great universe to get lost in. Unfortunately, I'm not as optimistic about the next release. Here's why. The next Dragon Age game has been in development for some time now, however Schreier's investigative-styled games journalism has revealed that the project was rebooted in October of 2017. Okay, but so what? Games are rebooted all the time, right? It's a normal thing that happens over years-long development projects within the industry. Although this is true, it varies from project to project. However, pertaining to Dragon Age 4's development, the nature of EA's financial goals, those being live service models that have shown to be best serving the sports and competitive shooter genres, are a direct conflict with what fans typically expect from BioWare releases. That's my first red flag, and recent EA releases are a good indication of this direction. Basically, EA wants all of their games to follow the tried and true money-making model of FIFA and Madden's Ultimate Team, a process described as a grind by design to incentivize players to spend money on microtransactions because of course EA isn't making enough money. In addition to that, EA also wants their game developers to build future releases on DICE's Frostbite engine. Frostbite is an impressive engine for sure, however it was designed from the ground up to create multiplayer first-person shooter titles like Battlefield. Developers who have to work with the engine but didn't help design it, aka any developer other than DICE, have reported a plethora of issues and difficulties. Another red flag is that not only did the last Dragon Age title have development pains and issues, but we now know that the current Dragon Age title has experienced relatively worse development pains. Of course, this is subjective, but Schreier's article has also revealed that the Dragon Age 4's development teams were reallocated to help with Mass Effect Andromeda's development, as well as aid in putting out the dumpster fire that was Anthem's development. The reboot also meant that the original vision and direction for the game has been completely scrapped. This is a shame because it just makes it seem like this title is going to follow the same development mistakes previous BioWare games have made. Which is ironic considering Schreier's article mentioned that the leadership and teams for Dragon Age 4's initial development shared a clear vision and direction with goals of not repeating mistakes made during Dragon Age Inquisition's development. I'm really hoping they don't turn this game into a live service. That would be absolutely horrible. I could talk so much more about this, but I don't really have the time. Thank you for watching. My name is Trevor for This Week In, and we'll see you next week.
What's up, gamers, and welcome to another edition of Game Breakers. I'm your host, Wesley Ellington, and this week, like I promised last week, we're going to be playing UFC Ultimate Team, not my team. I said that because I didn't really know, but I know a little more now, even though it's still kind of confusing. But I'm still excited to bring you guys some UFC Ultimate Team. So without further ado, let's get into the gameplay. So Ultimate Team is kind of hidden on the main menu, and most casual gamers who somewhat play UFC 3 doesn't even know it exists. Even the producer of this show, as well as host of Delta, Dalton, had absolutely no idea this game mode existed, and for good reason. So starting off this game mode, it gives you a tutorial, and if you're like me, when I get a new game, I just go into every game mode to see what it's about. And because I did this, and I got the game about a year ago, I had no idea what I was doing for the first 20 minutes of me playing. But ultimately, what? 2 puns in a row? Man. But ultimately, I figured out that you can put a team together from fighters you pull from beginners packs or fighters you can create within Ultimate Team. And sadly, not out of it because I've created a ton of fighters in the creative fighter mode, and it's kind of sad I can't use them. So what you're seeing right now is one of the creative fighters I created for my team, and as expected, your fighter is horrible and isn't really capable of any cool moves or damage, really. but luckily the game does give you some easy competition to start off with in these solo challenges. And from the little experience I gathered from playing this seems like the wisest way to build up your fighters as well as your team. When you complete these easy solo challenges, you are given rewards. Now, these rewards are what you would expect from easy challenges, but they can come in handy. They range from a wide variety of moves and abilities, but mostly stuff that doesn't change your fighter much. After opening these packs, you can equip your rewards to whichever fighter you want to that you have in your team. I gave it to my creative fighter because he was the lowest rated fighter on my team. You equip them before a fight so that you can put the new moves and abilities to work. And honestly guys, I spent about an hour or 2 or 3 playing the solo challenges, and obviously it got repetitive. I decided to venture out into the other game modes within the game modes, and there is so much content with so many different prerequisites that it's almost impossible for me to play any more than a quarter of it. There's so many packs and gameplay options, it's honestly overwhelming. So I decided to go back to the challenges and change up the fighter, under the impression that the moves would be slightly different. For all the fighters on your teams, they have generic moves, and it takes a while to actually have some diversity within the team. Overall, this game mode is probably really fun. Sadly, if you don't have a lot of money to buy virtual currency for the game, you're not going to be able to play much of the options displayed to you. Like many other My Teams or Ultimate Teams, it suffers from the dreaded microtransaction play that demoralizes players who just want to have quality content to play in video games. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Game Breakers. Make sure to tune in next week. We'll be playing a new game on the PlayStation 4. See you guys then.
Hey guys, what is going on, and welcome back to another video of Monkey Plays. This week we're doing something a bit different. Instead of reviewing another Battle Royale game, I'm going to list off my top 3 worst Battle Royales I played. Starting from least worst to absolute worst Battle Royale the internet can offer. Hope you guys enjoy the video, as next week I'll be doing my favorite Battle Royales I played. Now, let's get right on into the video. So starting out with a game I didn't think was that bad, we have Red Dead Redemption's Gun Rush. Gun Rush wasn't even terrible. There was just certain aspects I didn't like which affected my playstyle. The first thing I didn't like was the movement. The movement in this game is exactly like Grand Theft Auto 5, which is very awkward, sticky, and sometimes hard to control. While this isn't the game's fault, as every developer chooses how their character moves, it just seemed too awkward for me and got me killed on occasion. The second thing is the chance that you have at surviving if you're not familiar with the game's movement and dodges. This again isn't the game's fault, it's just how much time you have to put into the game. This can be frustrating to some people because not everybody has a chance to play the video game all day long. Then when they do play, they are less familiar, die a lot faster and quicker, which could result in driving the player base away because they are getting frustrated at the skill gap the game offers. So up next, we're switching things over to H1Z1. Again, H1Z1 wasn't even a bad game. There was just certain aspects that made the experience a bit dull. Starting with how flying works in H1. It's really confusing. I could never fly to any of my markers on the map, and it was really slow descending down. While I could have gone into the controller layout and learned the controls, if you're new to the game, it should provide tips on what to do if possible. The next thing is finding enemies. I spent a lot of time driving my four-wheeler off ramps, doing donuts, or driving through cities just to look and hopefully find a person. If I did find a player, I'd either die instantly or kill them and go off looking again. I just wish the hunt wasn't as much of a task. Now, the winner of the worst Battle Royale Monkey has reviewed, PlayerUnknown Battleground, better known as PubG. There's way too much to put in this video, so I'm only highlighting 2 things. PubG was honestly terrible. When I played it, I was experiencing bugs, glitches, and crashes that people were experiencing a year ago. So the things I didn't like were the load times. The load times in this game were horrible. I had at least a 2 to 3 minute queue for all the new maps, but I could instantly boot into the original one. This was frustrating because I wanted to play the newer maps. This isn't the game's fault again, but it shows just how low the population is on this game. The next thing I didn't like was the looting. When I would run around looting, I noticed I had to almost completely stop to pick something up. It felt really glitchy when trying to do so, and another thing was I felt like there was a certain area I had to look at the loot to be able to pick it up correctly, which means there's a character radius your player must be in to be able to loot, which is something I did not like at all. Guys, for $30, PubG is not the move. Just go buy Grand Theft Auto and you would be much happier with that. I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been Cody with Monkey Plays. Tune in next week where I rank the best Battle Royales I played. And up next, here's Project Delta with Dalton.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Project Delta with, of course, me, your host, Dalton Spees. And with me again this week, we have...
Aaron James, again.
And with the release of Final Fantasy X, the remakes are hitting Xbox and Switch this week. I wanted to bring in Final Fantasy 15. It's, of course, the newest game in the series, and it's the best-looking one because, man, this game looks so good in 4K. But both of these games are really good, in my opinion. And they really differ in the story, thankfully. Final Fantasy X, it's really focused on the love story of Tidus and Yuna and how they, are coming together to save the world. But Final Fantasy 15 is a different kind of love story, Aaron, It's really just about going out, balling with your bros. You're riding around in your regalia, which is your souped-up ride, and you're, fighting big monsters and killing chocobos. So I want to know, what do you think about the story in this game so far that you've played?
While I didn't finish the game, from what I did play, I did enjoy that it was more of a road trip with your homies and the adventure that ensues with that. I mean, there is a driving plot point, but from what I had played, that's what I got from it, and I enjoyed that. It was a cool little game.
Yeah, and so within the group you have Noctis, who he's the prince of Lucis, and he can kind of do really anything. He can carry a whole bunch of different weapons. You'll see here I can just kind of cycle through him. He's got just a bunch of big axes and big swords to throw around, and he can just do anything. You've got Gladiolus, who he's the muscle. He's got the big swords. Prompto, he's the little bubbly kind of little stupid guy, but he uses guns and he just kind of at everybody. And then there's Ignis, who he's the master tactician, and he has 20/20 vision, but he wears glasses just because he wants to make sure he's really good. So what's your favorite character of the main four that we have?
Probably Ignis. From what I had played, there was a spot where he gets blinded, and that was actually one of the most annoying parts of the game that I played. But I do enjoy him as a character the most out of all of them, probably.
Yeah.
He's really calculated and cold, I feel like, and I like that.
Yeah, but he's really all about his homies. This is actually my second playthrough your game. This is my new game plus, so I'm a little bit over leveled. I'm in the 40s, and the things I'm killing are not in the 40s. They're a little bit not in the 40s. But I know you said that you've played a bit of this game, and so I want to know, how do you think that just these guys being friends, not only being friends, but being brothers, how do you think that impacts the story?
You might be getting into questions too deep for my knowledge, but because from what I had played, they were all good friends and stuff. They're not actually brothers, are they?
No, they're not actually brothers. Okay. They're just really good homies.
Being that tight, I couldn't tell you. I did not play enough to.
It's just you can really tell that they all care for each other.
I agree with that. I understand that.
Yeah, of course.
But of course, it's just anyone with their homies, you're gonna love them.
Yeah.
Dalton here, I don't care for him that much. He's not my homie.
Not homies.
Noctis and Ignis, they're homies.
One of my favorite couple of parts in the game are at the beginning and towards the end. You're doing an activity with everybody, and then you just Stand By Me starts coming on in the background, and they're all just fighting, or they're pushing their cars here. Stand by me, and it's just it's beautiful, man. It's just man, this is really just how it would feel.
To be with my homies in a fantastical world.
Yeah, this world is so fantastical and so beautiful. Just looking at these mountains and looking at this very nice mariachi outfit that Noctis wears, because why would I wear his normal kingly gear? That's just not as cool. But throughout the game, there's different parts in the story where the members in your party get kind of they'll leave the party and go off and do their own thing. Gladio is he gets his butt whooped by somebody, so he's I gotta go get stronger. And then so they took those parts from the story and they made them into DLC episodes.
I saw that.
So you can play that part, and I know Gladios is really cool because he goes into this this cave, which is just like infested with like zombie skeletons of like weak warriors who came before him, and he goes and retrieves his sword, and it just comes back, and it's like he's a totally changed guy, and it's really neat. But
So do you think that was cut content? Like, do you think that was actually kind of upsetting that like story missions, when they go off and leave, you don't really know what's happening and you have to get the DLC to find out?
you know, maybe for some, but when you think just like how people make games nowadays, that's really just like that's just how people make games nowadays. You know, it's they plan for that to happen, and Square Enix knows what they're doing when they do that. But so yeah, another big part of the story is Noctis as a prince. He has the ability to go back and get the weapons of former kings of Lucis, and you just kind of go into their tombs, and they're like big dungeons, and you fight a bunch of monsters, and at the end you get a new weapon, like this axe right here that you can see him like pull out is one of the weapons that you can get, and it's just like, it's a nice little part of the game because you don't have to do it, but if you want to just like do some cool stuff in the game, you can go and do that.
So I haven't really played Kingdom Hearts 3 at all, but I remember you played that on here not that long ago. And I've heard that there was a severe lack of Final Fantasy worlds, or Final Fantasy at all.
Yeah, no Final Fantasy at all. That was really surprising to me because I went through the whole game and I just said, like, no Cloud, no Sephiroth, like nothing like that. And it was definitely disappointing for me because like that was something I always looked forward to when like those games came out. Here we are, we're finally back into some combat. I just took a big old whiff with the axe, but don't worry, we'll come back. But yeah, and then I want to know, what's your favorite kind of weapons in this game? I know like I really wanted to like the firearms just because I think that they're cool, but they just aren't as effective as like swords or just like anything really that's not a gun. So what's like your favorite kind of weapon to use?
I do remember liking magic, even though it wasn't like something I didn't think I could use constantly. Like it was like for powerful like AoE attacks, I think.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure I had 2 swords, dual swords.
Yeah, that sounds like something you could have.
I enjoyed that. I like faster, you know, more DPS weapons.
Oh yeah. My favorite weapon in this game, actually, it's this sword called the Ragnarok, and I like it so much because it boosts your power when you use the Warp Strike, which the Warp Strike is
one of your
one of my main
attacks.
things. I use it probably 90% of my time, which is fantastic. And then one of my favorite parts of this game, because it's like the big boss fights, is Noctis has to gain these powers to like, you know, take back his town because it's been overrun. And so the way he gets those powers is he essentially goes and fights like gods, and then after he beats them, the gods like give him their power, which is kind of wild. You know, Noctis gets pretty strong by the end of the game, and yeah, I just really like this game. I waited way too long to play it, but I'm glad that I did, and I'm hoping, Aaron,
I'll go back and give
that
it
you'll
another
go
chance.
back and give it another try, because
I do still have it.
that's what we're all about here, is getting people to play the games Dalton likes. I mean, really, that's the name of the game. But I'd like to thank everybody for coming in and watching this week's episode. I'm Dalton Speece, and with me was
Aaron James.
Thanks for watching.
See ya.